getting into more of the passive investments was really re-educating me on what the different asset classes were, how we could do this without being landlords and needing to spend every weekend fixing fixtures and toilet, and what the different opportunities were and what that could be.
Welcome to Truly Passive Income. I'm Neil Henderson.
And I'm Clint Harris. And today we have some friends of ours on that we've had a chance to get to know for a little while and met in person, and now excited to have them on the podcast. We've got Pat and Maggie Wills on with us. So Pat we met him through a community called the Left Field Investor Community, which is an educational platform for passive investors looking for syndication opportunities. Had a chance to, we connected with that community a couple years ago through an event in Columbus, Ohio, in person, met Pat there, had an opportunity to meet his wife, Maggie, as well, and kind of grew a relationship from there. And wanted to have them on today for several reasons, which I'll get into momentarily. But first of all, Pat and Maggie, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, guys. So a lot to get in here in terms of like, Pat, your background. You guys are limited partner investors. You also have a background a little bit on the operational side, on the educational platform side. You're also doing this on the side while working a W-2 job. So, and I think a lot of us have been there, right? We all have kind of had that balance, and it's a lot of times you have to build an off-ramp from that W-2 lifestyle to get to the full-time investor lifestyle. And I know I did it, and Neil did it, and it's part of the journey. And balancing those two things is not always easy. The real reason I wanted to have you guys on is because one thing that's really important to me, and the relationship that my wife and I have, is that we work together, we invest together, both actively and passively. I think that that's really important, is that you have a relationship, like we all have goals of what we want to accomplish in terms of time, location, financial independence. But it forces you, when you're making a decision with your spouse, it forces you to have a conversation as to about what your goals should be together for your marriage, for your life, or if you have children, or how you want to spend time with your family. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, your background, how long you've been married, the type of investments that you've done in the past, active and passive, and we'll take it from there as to what your goals are together as a couple.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. I've been in IT for basically my entire career, worked in the Northern Virginia area, systems administrator and engineer by trade. So relatively decent analytical mind, at least I like to think so. And, I grew up, my dad was renting out my grandparents' house as, a self-managed rental, since high school. So I've been exposed to just real estate as a concept from a lot earlier on in life than I think most folks have been. And I got to see the side that the pros and cons of it. I got to see the good side. Hey, look, this was paying for our high school. And then the cons of, dad was pretty much always over there fixing something, doing some type of maintenance or having tenant turnover, that type of thing. So from an investment perspective, that always got me thinking, looked at the stock market for a while, did some exploration around options as well, and then kind of came across bigger pockets, got interested in the BRRRR concept. My brother and I did a BRRRR up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That was an enormous learning opportunity and lesson learned. It's been successful, it's worked, but I know that that's not something that I'm going to do going forward. Because to your point, Clint, having a W-2 and then trying to manage a BRRRR 2 or 3 hours away on the weekends and do a lot of the work yourself is just, it's impossible. It's not able to be done. That got me down the turnkey alley a little bit, got a couple down in Memphis, Tennessee for a while, sold those at the tail end of COVID, and then kind of cycled that money into syndications. What mainly brought me that direction was I wanted asset class diversification. And I knew that if it was going to be something I was going to be doing, I could only do rentals. I'm not going to be a self-storage expert. I'm not going to be a triple net expert or anything like that. So I would like to leverage other people's expertise and time there as well.
You bring up such a great point, and Clint and I hammer this home. We're like broken records when it comes to this, is that in order to be a successful real estate investor, you need a combination of these three things: time, experience, and money. And what you had was money from an IT background. You didn't have the experience and you didn't really have the time. So you went out and you tried to get the experience by leveraging some of your free time, and you discovered that it's a lot harder than it looks to do successfully. And so that's often where it's where I discovered syndication. It's where many investors who go down the real estate path discover is, oh, okay, this is what they mean when they say time, experience, and money. And the problem is that without the time, you can't get the experience. And without the experience, it could become really hard to make money. And some people are able to slog through it and eventually get to that point where they've built up that systems, and maybe they become active investors, like Clint and I are, or maybe they just go, you know what? I'm going to keep the main thing, which in your case is you're an IT professional. I'm going to keep the main thing, and I'm going to leverage other people's expertise with my money. Is that an accurate description of sort of the path you're on?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I had heard that, like a decade ago. That would save me a lot of drama, I think.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We hear this same journey over and over. Now, you did it a lot faster than some people did. But before I expound on that and kind of follow that through, because the idea is like you want to hear about a journey, really, because, yeah, it's important to recap it. But what we really want to do is look at the trajectory, and can we time warp as to where you really want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? And can we take the hard lessons that other people have learned and get you to your destination faster? But before that, I want to talk to you, Maggie, and tell us a little bit about, your background, what you've done, and then like this whole real estate thing. Is this something that you drug Pat into kicking and screaming? Or I have a feeling maybe it was the other way around. And tell us about what it was like, the conversation the first time it came up, or if you come from a pedigree of that, and what the process has been like as you guys learned as a couple together about this.
Yeah. I have a degree in interior design and architecture.
All right.
So I spent a lot of my career in renovation and remodeling. And this investment thing was really Pat's wheelhouse. I don't want to say I was brought along kicking and screaming, but it was, oh yeah, honey, go ahead. It's fine. I did enjoy dealing with the Harrisburg house that was being rented out. I enjoyed going down to Memphis and seeing the houses that we had down there. I mean, I have a really specific knowledge set that meant single family homes and things like that. I understood how they worked more from a physical standpoint than a money standpoint, but I at least knew if we were walking to a house that was going to need a lot of work, it probably wasn't worth the money. So that's the expertise that I kind of brought to the table. But getting into more of the passive investments, that conversation went a little differently. It was really re-educating me on what the different asset classes were, how we could do this without being landlords and needing to spend every weekend fixing light fixtures and toilets and things like that. And just what the different opportunities were and what that could be for the future of our family.
So because you have that background in design and architecture, I'm assuming that you're a good visionary to what you can turn something into. And I don't have that gift. My wife is pretty good at it. But obviously that's something that's your occupation, right? Is that you have a vision as to what you can turn projects into. Do you think that background helped you understand the vision that Pat was trying to put together for your family and what you were doing? Because to me, it seems like you're in that real estate realm, right? You're in that world, and it was probably an easier conversation for you guys to have than some people have to have when they're bringing it up for the first time.
It was in some ways, and in other ways it wasn't. Talking about money and investments and things like that was not something that I was kind of brought up doing. So having the conversation about, we're going to write this really big check and hopefully it's going to work out, that was a little harder in terms of the conversation. And also just, he was talking about analytical mind, and he can handle large numbers in his head and what is ROIs and all of that. And I didn't understand any of the acronyms. I had the kind of large picture understanding of what it meant, but the actual day-to-day or the terms that was where the big education on my end kind of came in. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And I love the fact that you guys have, different sides of this, right? The analytical side is something that's extremely important. And then like the visual side of, is it worth doing this to this house or is it not worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze on this individual project? And then somebody else is more like the nuts and bolts on the back end of the numbers. I think it's important to know thyself, right? Recognize what I'm good at, recognize what I'm good at, what I'm not at. Either whether or not that's being analytical or whether it's driving to Pennsylvania and swinging a hammer on the weekends, right? What are you good at? What are you not good at? Any property is only as good as the person operating it. Let me ask you this. A lot of times this happened to me in my marriage as a young married couple. We had 9 single family homes before we relocated to Wilmington and started buying small multifamily, converting them to Airbnbs. Got out of most of that. I still have 14 Airbnbs and a property management company, but now we exclusively do. I'm a general partner, but most of what we do is passive investing into nomad deals or other syndications. So that's kind of our track record. But in terms of for you, a lot of times early on as you come up with the next project, especially if it's a BRRRR and it's a single family, it is really easy to get laser focused on the next project. This is the goal. This is the project that we're doing. And sometimes it's hard. You lose sight of the project that's coming after that, or you have this goal in mind, this 10, 20-year goal that you really want to accomplish. And sometimes if you don't keep the focus, you can over leverage yourself on the next one property because you're just so focused on getting the next one done that it can steal your ability to scale to where you want it to be. So I'm curious to know, have you guys, as you were doing this, was it kind of like, let's get in, let's do a property, let's figure it out? Or had you at the time put a goal together what you wanted for your marriage in terms of time, location, and financial independence of like, obviously at some point you probably don't want to be an IT professional anymore? Or did this force you to have a conversation as, what do we want our lives to look like for our marriage, for our ability to be location independent or travel? Do you guys have a goal in mind that you're working towards now, or is that something that's constantly evolving and that you guys talk about?
Yeah, we do now. And over the years, it's obviously been refined. It started out very generic, like, hey, do you want to work till you're 75? Okay. And that was kind of what really did it for me was when I was working on, a couple jobs ago, there was a guy literally sitting in front of me at the desk, like the next cubicle in front of me. And he was just all squeezed out of life, and he was just miserable. He's getting ready to retire. He was talking about how he's got a certain amount of money and how he's going to have to downsize and medical expenses and stuff like that. If I stay here, that's my future. I can't do that. So then we started to try and get a little bit more proactive there. And one of the big things in my industry is learning how to fail faster. So that's why we started looking at the BRRRRs and the turnkeys and everything like that. And when we get one of them under our belt, I would say, all right, I know this is probably as bad as it's going to be because I'm learning while I'm doing all this stuff as well. But how would this look if I had 20 or 30 of these things? How many turnkeys am I going to need at $200 or $300 a month back then to get W-2 replacement plus another 50% for investable income and expenses, emergencies, stuff like that? I actually wrote a PowerShell script. Like I coded it out like, hey, how many months will it take to buy the next one? And it spit out a spreadsheet for me. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. This is insane. Just with the banks selling loans and all the upkeep and school taxes, school district taxes and stuff like that, escrow, it was, if I was going to need 30 or 40, couldn't really do it. So I used those 2 or 3 that I had as an example of, all right, these individual deals were a success, but this is not the way. I know this doesn't scale. This isn't the way. Same thing with the BRRRRs, by nature of it being a one-to-one relationship. So we got some experience out of that and realized that wasn't the way. Stock trading, options trading, yeah, sure. Enormous risk, enormous tax implications, definitely not passive. That's probably not the way.
And that took a lot of your time.
When
you're trying, it was a lot of effort.
Yeah. So, what is something that, you sacrifice a little bit of the return up front, but you get some time freedom back and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were really finding what didn't work. And I'm not trying to compare myself to Edison at all, but they said he failed to invent the light bulb however many times. Similar thing, just trying out different methodologies. Because you can listen to podcasts and read books, but the questions you ask and the way you feel about something when you actually write a check and actually do it, completely different.
Yeah. And I think, in all of these kind of failing forwards, you had a big vision of where you wanted to get to. And I would say I was a little bit more reserved just in making sure that, okay, if we're writing all of these big checks, can we actually afford to do this? And not eat ramen noodles every night. We ended up having talks about buckets of money. And, okay, if we're going to do this next project, what bucket of money is that coming out of? Is it coming out of our travel money? Is it coming out of eating out? Those type of things, and making sure that we're not sacrificing the life we're living now for a potential future, and making sure that we're not accidentally double spending the same money, making sure that those buckets stayed separate.
I love that. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Like putting things together, you have different skill sets. Everybody's looking at the same problem, but you're taking away different perspective and you have different ideas of what that looks like. But if you're all in the same boat and you're rowing in the same direction, right? The idea is that you're working towards a common goal. I love something that you said, Pat, about failing faster. I love that. I've never heard that before. We've coming up on like 70 episodes or something like that. I've never heard that. And
it's an IT.
Oh, there it is. That's why I didn't get it. the
technology.
Yeah. Woo. Right over. Neil's my IT guy. One of the things that it resonates with me, and I'm reflecting back, I'm like, oh man, I've done a lot of different things, most of them wrong. And one of the things that I've learned that I was thinking about the first time that you started talking, Pat, is that there's this common journey that we see among real estate investors, especially if they start out young. And for those listening to this podcast, I'm sorry, you've probably already heard me say this at least 5 to 10 times over the last 6 months. But a lot of times what we see is if somebody's really young, and a lot of times the wholesaler route will be like somebody just out of the military that's got hustle and they're ready to go. They're a little bit older than somebody getting just out of high school, but they've been around for a couple of years. They're driven. These are motivated people, but they don't have any money. And one of the journeys that we see, whether it's there or somebody just becomes a real estate investor or real estate agent or whatever it may be, they don't have any money. So they get started as either a real estate agent or a wholesaler, right? And they're trading time for money. They're hustling. They're putting up the signs. They're making the calls, doing everything. It takes a few months, but they start having a little bit of success. They sell one deal. They make $5,000, $10,000, whatever it may be. And it's just enough to keep them motivated and keep doing it. So they do that for a period of years and they find some buyers that are buying these wholesale deals from them. And finally they realize, oh, I'm passing up some good deals. I'm selling these to these flippers and these flippers are making all this money. I'm going to start doing that. So they're wholesaling deals. They start selling. They do 1 or 2 flips on their own. They bomb the first 1 or 2 just like I did, right? But then the third or fourth, they'd get one and they get it right. And like, okay, supposed to make 30 grand. I made 8. The next one I was supposed to make 40 grand. I made like 16. But the third one I did well. Those are the ones my wife and I did, right? So you kind of fast forward. And for me, it was just enough to realize I don't want to do that. That's not me. But even for the person that it is right for them, and maybe they do it 5, 7, 10 years, but you realize whether you're a real estate agent, a wholesaler, or a house flipper, you get paid once. You do a deal, the deal's over, you get your check, that's it. And the day you stop working is the day that you stop getting paid. So that person starts realizing, oh, I need to keep some rental properties, which is where you started out. You said, I'm an IT professional. I need to keep the main thing, but let's buy rental properties to pay for this. So you start buying rental properties, and a lot of people will waste 5 to 10 years there. I built 9 of them up before I realized each one of those properties is 1 or 2 headaches a year. Every time somebody moves out, I've got thousands of dollars in capital expenditures of things I have to fix, and a whole year worth of cash flow can get wiped out really quickly. I wasn't doing Section 8, but it wasn't much better. And I did it for the cash flow. There's very little appreciation on these properties. So for me, it took 9 single family homes before I realized that for me and the goals for my family, that was a failure. You failed a lot faster. And I love that because the time is more important than anything else. And the journey typically is that wholesaler or flipper starts keeping single family rentals until they figure out it's a very slow way to get ahead. Eventually they start moving towards small multifamily, then medium multifamily. And a lot of times you realize that if you go a little bit bigger, you can afford to have a manager who's going to take good care of it. Because if you only have a few properties, it's hard to find a property manager who cares about the property or about you. So there's an economies of scale. Eventually you get up to the point that it's easier to have a medium-sized apartment complex than a bunch of single families. But over time, and this is sometimes a 20, 25, 30-year investing career, that person eventually realizes that their time is worth more than anything else. And they are willing to make a little bit less of a return, and they will sell their properties, 1031 or liquidate. And eventually that person usually becomes, unless they absolutely love it, they become a passive investor. And it makes more sense for them to take the money that they've made over the years and invest it into other people's deals instead of making 30, 35% as an active investor and spending all the time doing it. You'd rather make 20 to 22% passively invested into somebody else's deal. And that person is often like, the average investor we talk to, I believe, is like 55 to 57. Understanding that when you get started with a passive investment strategy, you really need to give yourself a couple years before that starts paying out in a meaningful way. So that person that discovers it in their mid to late 50s, they're in their 60s before it starts paying out in a meaningful way. And what you really lost is all that runway you could have had earlier. If you started years or decades earlier, there's a snowball effect and it grows and continues to grow over time. So the idea of time warping that 25, 30 years of failure, and it may be a success for 10 years, but as your goals change, that's going to end up being a failure for what you're trying to accomplish for your life, if what you're trying to accomplish is time and location independence. So fast forwarding and failing faster on that puts you guys in a situation where you're LP investors at a very young age. I just said way more than I intended to. I was very long-winded.
We're used to it.
Classic Clint. But I don't want to gloss over that, because I think it's really important that you did that, especially the fact that you guys did it together as a couple. So now, and one of the things that's tough is like when you're investing together and you're married, but you're also partners, like it's always around. It's always part of the conversation, right? On date night, Abby and I talk about real estate a lot of times. It's like, man, sometimes we need a break from that. But, Maggie, you mentioned before that money wasn't really something that you thought about it, you guys talked about. What about now? Is it part of the conversations that you guys are having, and are your goals constantly changing?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I should probably point out that we started this investment journey before we were married. So we were living together and we were talking about it before we got married. And I think that helped also, because it showed that, okay, he's doing this separately from me. I'm seeing that this is working, and we're talking about our future together and how this can be a part of it. So I think that was also really helpful. And it helped kind of, again, with that runway. We've been talking about this for 5, 7 years?
Sure.
Something, I have no idea.
Sure. Smart answer. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is the number of single family rentals that we were going to need was to break even for where we were then. And realizing that if we wanted to not be living essentially paycheck to paycheck, we were actually going to need more. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's every date night, but we do talk a lot more about this. I mean, every once in a while he'll walk in and be like, "Hey, I heard about this deal." And I'm like, "Okay, tell me the big picture part of it." And, making sure that I think the biggest thing now is making sure that the asset classes start to get more diverse, because I think when we got into more of the passive, it was really multifamily properties.
An operator.
And yeah, when we were with one operator and realizing that's, oh no, now we're putting too many eggs in one basket.
Well, talk to us about that, the journey. I mean, you've touched on a little bit the journey of sort of the active road now to the more passive. And I want to dig in a little bit about how the genesis of the left field investor community happened and your part in it, Patrick.
Yeah. I've told this story. So Jim knows. Jim is the founder and leader of LFI. I found those guys because all the other investment groups that were out there were either owned and run by sponsors. So enormous conflict of interest there for me personally. They also cost $10,000 a year, which is predatory in my mind. I'd rather get my education by putting that 10K towards an investment rather than a Discord channel or something. And third, they were East Coast time. All the other groups that I was looking at were West Coast time. And I don't want to come home, 6 p.m. and then have to jump on a call at 9 or 10 p.m. Eastern. So it was a combination of all three things. But once I got into the Left Field Investors group, it was just a bunch of guys hanging out, men and women just hanging out. And there was no pushing, no salesmanship, nothing like that. It was just a bunch of casual people together who you could talk to about this. We were able to get financially exposed and vulnerable and talk real numbers with people and not have to worry about being, shamed or judged or anything like that. You could ask dumb questions and people would give you smart answers. It's a great combination. And then how my involvement wrapped up, I made the mistake of volunteering to help Jim out with some cryptocurrency education. And then I just got roped in and that was it.
For a little bit of background for those who don't know, and we've actually had Jim Pfeiffer and Chad Ackerman have both been on the podcast. And those are two of the founders of LFI, which is Left Field Investors, along with Steve Sue and Ryan Stieg and Pat Wills. And they're all kind of the principals and founders of Left Field. And Left Field started as just a local meetup. I think it was supposed to be at a brewery or a bar or something like that, like the month before COVID hit. And ultimately, when COVID hit, everything got shut down, and it was an alternative investing educational forum. And they ended up just opening up online instead of doing it in person. And then it was like, oh, well, if we're doing this virtually, I guess we can open it up to Ryan Stieg and these people over here in this different state. And it grew. We connected with the Left Field investor community when I think there were like 1,200 members. And then the next time we ran into them, there was like 1,800 members. And I don't even know what it grew up to, over north of 2,000 when we sponsored the Columbus event, which was cool. Left Field Investors the reason it's called Left Field is like, these are left field investments, right? These are non-traditional, not paper assets. These are what's out there in left field that you can invest in that might give you a better return, right? So that's the name behind it. And they had their first event in the outfield of a baseball stadium, which was really cool. Got a chance to connect with everybody in person, a couple hundred very intelligent investors there, and everybody, exactly what you mentioned, Pat, is the culture. Everybody's trying to help each other, very educational. Then they went on to sponsor the best ever event this past year, best ever real estate conference, which we sponsored. We sponsored LFI and the BEC event as well. And then recently, and this just happened over the last couple of weeks, hope you don't mind me bringing it up, Left Field Investor was bought by Bigger Pockets. And here, I'm going to make an assumption here. I think it's gotten a lot harder for people to find deals over the last few years, right? And my wife discovered Bigger Pockets for us. That's how our kind of journey. I did real estate wrong for a lot of years before I understood the power of networking and podcasting. And my wife came home from being on the road a lot and was like, you need to listen to this. I was like, what is this podcast? Something about pockets, like you're learning how to make dresses. What's going on? I started listening to it and obviously got hooked from there. But, a lot of us started down that and eventually kind of grew out of that. I think Bigger Pockets has done a lot of amazing things for a lot of people. And as deals have gotten harder to find over the last couple of years, I think the value of Bigger Pockets has gone down. If you're not actively working on a flip or a duplex or something, and you're not actively investing, the value of that community is probably not the same. If you're actively invested in a deal, there's an unbelievable amount of resources there. And I think that Bigger Pockets saw the writing on the wall of it's harder to find deals. There's not as many active investors. It's pushing more and more people to look to partner with professional operators that still know how to operate and find deals in any environment. And they sent out a feeler. The number, tell me if I'm wrong on this, Pat, the number I heard was something like they put out an email of like, hey, anybody interested in learning about passive investing? And they had something like 20 or 30,000 people sign up for a newsletter. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It blew up my mind too.
Yeah, that's crazy. So as a result, I think they did something very intelligent, and they acquired Left Field Investors to be rebranded as Passive Pockets. And I think that's a testament to Jim and Chad and you and the hard work that you guys did building that community, because you tapped into something that was clearly a need. It's a very inexpensive community to join, or was. I don't know what it's going to be in the future, but I love the fact that it costs something, right? People have to pay something to be a part of it, because it keeps out people that are going to be a little bit non-committal. So that's the way that we connected, and it's fun. I didn't realize that how you got involved there was through volunteering for cryptocurrency. No good deed goes unpunished, right?
Yep.
Did you say, so you found that community on your own? How has that pushed things forward for you? And has that, in terms of the exposure you had to syndication and things like that, how much of your success do you attribute to that community?
Almost all, honestly. So before Left Field Investors, we were solely with that one operator that Maggie referenced and one asset class. And it was just because I didn't know anything else existed. We were not accredited at the time, so that obviously precluded a lot of opportunities for us. And just getting into LFI and hearing people talk about self-storage, nomad, car wash, like all types of random stuff that I never would have thought about before. I mean, there are some people talking about marinas and RV parks, not mobile home parks, but RV parks. Awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing. And when they all this is where the analytical mind comes back in, getting exposure like that and getting a backlog of videos that I can just binge, on second monitor content while I'm doing work and just hear somebody talk about some different asset class, the sponge is going to absorb some water a little bit, maybe not everything, but it's a good way to multiply my time. And yeah, being able to approach those sponsors as a community and say, look, yeah, we might all send in a bunch of different checks, but I'm not just one investor here. We're part of a network, and the answers you get are obviously going to be shared with the community, good or bad. So I don't want to see it gives you a bit of a VIP treatment, but it kind of sort of does. You'd probably be able to answer how that is received better than I. But just getting exposure like that and getting the time of day from sponsors and some type of preferred terms or reduced minimums, that really, really helped as well. So it was really just drinking from a fire hose as soon as I joined the community.
For sure. I love that. So I want to put you on the spot a little bit here. First of all, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you guys? Give me a range if you want to.
I'm 39.
I'm 35.
So you guys are really young to have found syndication, right? I stumbled into it as an operator along with Neil and our general partners, but you're really young to have found it. And I think that runway gives you a lot of opportunity. But if you're willing to go on record, and you don't have to give me a specific number, but what are the goals that you guys have put together for your lives as to what you want to accomplish? Like, is there a time that you want to walk away from a W-2? What do you want to do with your time from there? Is there a financial goal that you're looking for? Is there a travel goal that you're looking for? Like, for the sake of creating a vision, what are you guys working towards?
Sure. I'll jump on that one first. So we invest through an LLC. We're 50% members, and everyone talks about, oh yeah, you have to do these corporate meeting minutes every year. It's a formality. We're taking that seriously. We actually have basically an investment policy statement, and like we would have with traditional stocks, and that's our meeting. So we'll go through it and say, all right, what are our actual goals for the next year? Let's break that down into monetary terms and kind of figure out, do we need more appreciation in our investments, or do we need more near-term cash flow? What's the tax treatment of it? Okay, now we can look at what does the existing portfolio have? Are we geographically or asset class or operator unbalanced? When do some of these deals go full cycle? Are we going to have to worry about recapture and all that type of thing? But it starts with the goals. So I'm assuming you guys have heard about that ideal day exercise.
Expound on it, please. I think I have, but I'm sure that a lot of our listeners have not.
Yeah. So it's a brainstorming session. Leave your phones away. We did this on paper and said, forget about money. What do you want to do? What lifestyle do you want to have? You want to have a primary residence? You want to have a vacation home somewhere? How many vacations do you want to take? What hobbies do you want to do on a monthly basis? All right. Forget about numbers. So just write all that stuff down and go nuts. Okay. We've got that exercise completed. Now let's circle back and assign some rough numbers to these. They're going to be inaccurate. We're going to highball a little bit. But hey, that's cool. So, all right, if we want to take a vacation every 3 months, that's probably $3,000 a quarter that we need to set aside, depending on how big and how small the vacation is. And we just kind of reverse engineer that into an average. All right, it's $3,000 a quarter for vacation. That's $1,000 a month. So now here's our monthly number that we need, and then that goes through and informs the investment decisions, or at least what we try and look for. because there's so many syndications that are out there and so many opportunities. I need the first decision I say to be no. I need to find a no immediately. Otherwise, I'm just going to drown in PPMs. So for me, I would love to get out of my IT job eventually. It's going to be tough because that's where our insurance is through, and it pays really well, but it is restrictive in what you can and can't do just in life.
Mhm.
So that is something I would love to do eventually, but it's not on the horizon for me probably for 10 years, realistically.
Probably. On the kind of flip side of that, I left my job at the beginning of August.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was partially because of your W-2 and knowing that our insurance and things are covered. But it is also because of the passive stuff. Just knowing that our money is growing and working for us. And, I'm trying to the last couple of weeks, I've really tried to sit and do that ideal day of what does my day look like if I don't have the structure of having to get up and go to a 9 to 5, what things were falling through the cracks that would make our life better if I had the time and the energy to be able to put towards that.
Not to throw you out of the bus, but you said swimming masters.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was a competitive swimmer for 14 years, all through college. And yeah, I've been wanting to get back in the pool, and that's just something that hasn't been a high priority. It's also very difficult to do if you're trying to join kind of a master swimming program where they tend to have set practice times. And it's just not something I thought I would be able to do again. And now I have the time and the opportunity.
Yeah.
In Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Work Week, he does sort of a similar exercise, which is sort of like remove money from the equation. What do you want to do with your day? And he even sort of talks about some of the challenges around that is like, if you suddenly become financially independent at a young age and your friends and your family are not financially independent, it can be kind of isolating.
Mm-hmm.
But he also talks about, I love this, where he talks about thinking about those things that you want to do and then putting a cost associated with them, a monthly cost. And then he talks about sort of trying to find the asset that's going to pay for that particular thing. And I've had this thought as well sometimes, like, all right, I'm not going to pay off my mortgage on my primary residence because I have a 3% interest rate. I mean, it's absurd. I'll never get that again. But what if I had a sudden windfall of money that would allow me to completely pay that off? Would I do that? And I think, no. What I would do is I'd try to put it into an investment that's going to pay a return, that's going to pay my mortgage. Plus, because then it never goes away. And now it continues to, have you guys used that thought process at all when you think, okay, we want this, $3,000 a quarter vacation. So now we need an asset that's going to pay us $1,000 a month in order to be able to afford that. Is that sort of the thought process you're going through?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We really like the perpetual ownership model as well. So that's one of the things that attracted us to invest with Nomad at another firm. But that I like the hunt for deals in general, but being time bound for it when you're going to have a capital event and then you're kicked out and that money is just idle, it puts a lot more pressure on than I think the passive lifestyle I would like to pursue, at least in part. I know it's unavoidable to an extent. But yeah, the decisions, the lifestyle decisions that we're talking about definitely inform the investment decisions to an extent. Yeah, I really like that model.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I have that conversation all the time. It's like we'll get the money that we need to do something, and I always want to turn and invest it. And I'm like, yeah, we could do that, or we could invest it over here, and that could pay for it. Like you get to the point like, I don't want to pay a mortgage. I want to have an investment that pays my mortgage. I don't want to buy a new truck. I want this that buys a new truck. And it's a mental. You have that, and now we're to the point. I'm 41, and my wife is 40, and it's like we're having the conversation of like, I'm always building towards the future. And at this point, she's like, yeah, I get that. But like, what future are we building towards? Like at some point we have to start spending money. We have to start enjoying our life. We have to have to travel. And I think there's a balance, right? Most people don't even get started with the front. It's like, how much money can I make or how much money can I borrow to get this thing that I want or do this vacation that I want? And the shift is like, how much money can we invest so that it's kicking off this much so that we can spend it on this experience or this item that we want? And then eventually you're just outpacing that. It's like, how much can we invest in general to make more so that we can reinvest it? Because you realize that life is not about things, it's about memories and experiences and things like that. But even then, there is a balance that's like, listen, we're all here for a blink of an eye. Let's enjoy it as well. And make sure that the money only means something if you're using it to turn it into memories of things that you've done with people that you love in beautiful places.
Yeah. I don't know if you caught Maggie giving me the stink eye a little bit, but boy, that resonated because I have overcorrected on your side of the fence there, Clint. But every $10 I save, that's another 0.01 of a syndication. So why are we going out to eat dinner and stuff like that? That $200.
We have food at home.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
More storage.
Well, and it's funny. We had a similar conversation just like last night or yesterday, where it was okay if we have all this money in investments. It's there to be used. If we don't use it, why is it there? And, being able to make sure that it's working for us rather than us working to put the money into investments. Because then you're stuck back in the exact same cycle of working for a paycheck. It's just a paycheck from a different place.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a testament to the mentality that you guys have built for yourselves. You've been talking about this since before you got married, and realize that the conversation we're having it is just as hard to talk to some people these days and get them to save any money at all or to stop living off credit cards. It is the same conversation. It's just as difficult. And then the other side of the coin is someone that has trained themselves to save and to invest and to plan for the future. Sometimes it feels like you're pulling that investment out of their cold white fingers to get them to spend it on something. But wouldn't you rather be on that side? Like it's easier to learn how to loosen up and to spend that on your family and on experiences than it is for the people that are can't save anything. They make those financial decisions that as soon as they have it, they have to spend it and it's burning a hole in their pocket. I think it's easier to learn how to loosen up a little bit and to enjoy that than to start later in life and try to have to teach yourself how to save or how to dig yourself out of a financial hole. So pat yourselves on the back. And it's the same conversation I'm having in my marriage. It's the same conversation Neil's having in his marriage. And it comes with part of the territory is that I grew up poor. I'm one of 6 kids. And it's like, I know I'm not going to have anything unless I get it for myself. But within reason, like you have to realize that like, look, I can't take it with me. There's got to be a balance there. And that's a game that we're all playing. But the important thing is that it is a conversation we're having in our marriages and it's important. So, all right. Well, listen, I think that that'll probably wrap it up from here. I want to say thank you. I've enjoyed the chance to get to know both of you guys. And like you mentioned, you guys are invested with us. So we've navigated that process together. Pat, I've had the joy of watching what you guys have done with Left Field. I look forward to continue to supporting you guys any way that we can and seeing how that's growing. But if anybody is curious about connecting with you guys specifically through Left Field Investor or whatever's coming next or want to hear more about your journey, is there any way that they might be able to do that?
Hit me up on LinkedIn, Patrick Wills. You can hit me up on leftfieldinvestors.com. Love talking about this stuff. I can get you an email address put in the show notes as well. PatrickJW150@gmail.com. And I'll spell that PatrickJW150@gmail.com.
That sounds great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate your time as well. Appreciate the two of you guys coming on together as a couple. And let's do it again a year or two down the future and let's see how some of those goals have changed.
Oh, boy.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for listening and watching the Truly Passive Income podcast. If you liked the show, if you think it would be useful for someone else, the greatest compliment that you could give us would be to share the episode, leave a comment down below, or leave us an honest review. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know down below. And remember, with truly passive income comes freedom of time, place, and the freedom to pursue your higher purpose.